Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft podcast. My name's Bruce Wilkinson. Thanks for downloading and listening. Joining me again in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you, sir?
I almost feel like you're baiting me now when you do that. To be honest, you can say whatever you like. I'm watching cricket, so I may not even reply.
Fair play too. I do actually have a question for you. Not so much a change in approach from the customary hello, but more a question for you. So we have a manager in one of our leagues that has only got one fly half in his squad, and that being Damian McKenzie, who we drafted early. There's no other fly halves in the player hub. I think the best you're going to get is Duncan Paiua, who's not the greatest option, and below that are players that are getting maybe 2 minutes at a time. DMaks on a bye this week. Richie Mo'ungas gets injured last week, which leads to Mitch Hunt being one of the most valuable fly half pickups of the season thus far. This said manager has the number 2 waiver pick, and to top it all off, the number 1 waiver wire ranking is in Barbados, sunning himself on a beach. My question to you, is it better to be tin-ass lucky or good?
Well, they say you make your own luck, right?
That's true.
Which is absolute bullshit. I think you're actually, weirdly, I think you're referring to me, and I didn't even notice, to be honest. It's only probably now that you're really pointing it out. I think I chucked a random waiver request on Hunt, not thinking I was getting it. I didn't even realize that I was number 2. So, yeah, it's just, I think you're right. It's just a combination of luck. I think I put a waiver request on every single fly half that was out there.
Yep.
And when the email popped up, I was like, oh, okay. That's handy.
Yeah. It is an interesting point, though, because fly half is very, very thin. So that's a byproduct of not having any cheaters kings fourth this year. And it seems that's the position that's most affected by, especially when it comes to bye weeks. And we're seeing a lot more trading taking place this season as opposed to last. And not just at fly half positions, but the player hub isn't nearly as deep as it has been in previous seasons. But to give you a little bit of fair due, and tell me if I'm not accurately describing how you go about your waiver wire, but you're quite selective on who you pick up. You very rarely put more than, say, 1 or 2, because you, whether it's by hook or crook, you like to have that low waiver wire pick in the next round if someone cuts them that week, or even in the next Wednesday waiver wire. Is that accurate, or is again just as it has happened?
No, I think you're probably right. I mean, I noticed with some guys it feels like they're turning over half their team every week. Yeah. And I suppose it's a combination of 2 things. One is I've got some faith in the players I drafted, and secondly, there's always that amazing waiver wire pick that kind of comes around once a year. And, I've been burned by that in past years. And so I'm just sort of thinking, well, I'm just going to mostly try and save it for when I really need it, or for when somebody crops up when you're thinking like, this guy could be someone that's going to make your season. Yeah,
I think that's the way to go. I was very frustrated this morning that I had one in for Hunt, I had one in for Blade Thompson and Cobus Fisa as well. And I lost all of those 3. And the one that I did get was Duncan Paiua, who I did not really want, but I was nervous about Lealiafano getting pulled in about the 42nd minute. So I thought, well, I don't have another fly half on my bench. I need to do something about that as well, because I didn't have Wharenui Harawa. So yeah, very gutted that I actually got bumped back to the number 10 ranking for the next kind of week as well by getting Duncan Paiua. There's a lesson there somewhere.
Yeah, and the other thing, and it was just something that sort of occurred to me when I saw some of them coming through this morning, was that if, in some ways it's good to kind of contest some of these players that people are going to be interested in, because it may not be something that's obvious to everybody, but you only lose your waiver pick if it was a contest. Yep. For that player, so somebody else is in on him. So even if I'm down the list and I think, I'm not going to get him, put a request in, because if no one else does, at the very least, you're knocking that other guy's waiver pick on.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
use it wisely.
Yeah, if you can screw other people over, it's all part of it.
Absolutely. So most of the reviews have been done. So for this podcast, we will go through game by game, but it's more around looking forward as opposed to, looking at any sort of exceptional performers, look at some injuries and a couple of the teams that have been named already. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so we don't have too many team news just yet. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rugby Draft, that's Fantasy RUG Draft, or drop us a note at support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. And we do have our Start Bench show again on Friday at 6:30, getting a lot of good feedback from that. So if you do have some questions during the week around who you might want to start this game week, then put them in the hashtag Start Bench, and we'll get to them on the Friday show. Now, I stress put Start Bench because we do get a lot of requests, and that's the way that we pull the ones to the top of the list. So please put hashtag Start Bench, and we'll get to them on Friday afternoon. Right. Your beloved Chiefs versus the Blues. Where do you want to start here?
I'm just trying to think where the stories are. Well, I mean, I think
Sean Wanui?
Yep, that was going to be one of them. Absolutely. So, yeah, we touched on it briefly. We said probably, might have some value, being a midfielder playing on the wing, and sure, it was almost an opinion changing performance, I guess. Showed up some pretty, I guess, more highly thought of outside backs on the opposite team. Yeah,
really. No, he's a strong player. He certainly looked like a midfielder playing on the wing, but he finished his try very nicely, sucking the try line there.
Sorry, Taylor has just had one out of the ground. He's just slogging everything because he can't run. If you listen to this, New Zealand's probably lost. But he's batting on one leg, and so he's just throwing the bat at everything, and he's just literally on one leg. He's hopping up and down, but he's just put Rashid miles out of the ground.
Is that the ambulance I heard coming for him in the background as well? Very good, I like it. But Sean Wanui, interesting case. He was getting his hands on the ball a hell of a lot. Quite what it looks like longer term, I'm not too sure. We are hearing after the bye that Charlie Ngatai might be back, but that's a big might. I wouldn't be dumping Sean Wanui at the moment. He looked promising playing on the wing, and as I say, Charlie Ngatai might be back as well. One player on the other wing, LMNOP, goodness gracious, he looks awesome.
Yep, looks world class.
Does, doesn't he? Just line break after line break after line break. He, quality player. We had a few bad news, I guess, before kick-off. Retallick got pulled and Stevenson got pulled. Stevenson was the absolute disaster because it was 2 minutes after the actual game lock, so you couldn't actually do anything of that. Retallick, however, was a little bit earlier. Stevenson, I am hearing, is probably not longer term as well. So to have Sean Wanui starting, you need to really have Pulu, McNichol, Ngatai and Stevenson injured. So I think there's a bit of a queue there as well, so I don't need each one of those to come back. Chiefs front row, officially dead. Have they got any props left or any players left?
Yeah, was it Laulala gone for a couple of months or something, is it?
Atu Maoli out for the season as well.
Was it Atu? Yeah.
Yeah, both of them. So yeah, Henry's done for 2 months and him
Great.
for season.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, not good. I kind of mused that maybe they would go with Elamino to 15 if Charlie Ngatai wasn't back and Stevenson wasn't back. He played there for Northland. Possibility to go back there as well. And he's in good nick, so thought that'd be a way to go. Where else do you want to go with this game?
What about Pulu injured, not going on tour? So I think he's definitely going to miss the next 2 games. We'll see. I mean, he went off under his own steam, so it didn't look too bad, but missed the tour, I guess. So
yeah, 6 weeks or something. Is that what you hear?
Oh no, didn't know that.
Yeah, 6 weeks apparently.
Fantastic. Considering I have him in every league.
Yeah, that is good news. Sam Knocker, I'm assuming, is going to come in there and play half. He actually looked okay when he came on. He played well in the tens as well. Good little player. Another player that has been injured, hasn't got on the field yet, is Pera Franchise, who's gone on tour with the Blues to South Africa. So, be interesting to see where he starts to chime in. Those with Bryn Gatland owners, maybe start scratching around to see if people are picking up that Pera Franchise is just on the horizon. Sam Cane, turning into a little bit of a fantasy thing. Have you picked up on this as well? He seems to be, before it was all tackles with Sam Cane, and he wasn't all that valuable for fantasy rugby, but granted there was a massive run against the Crusaders, but he's in a lot of those kind of goal lines, and he's breaking a lot more tackles now.
Yeah, not buying it.
Not buying it?
No.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I love Sam Cane, but no, not as a fantasy player.
Yeah. No, look, it just surprised me as well. I've seen some pretty good, two good performances. Certainly the one with the Blues made me stand up a little bit more than the kind of unconventional line break that he normally does, that he did against the Crusaders. Blues midfield, absolute junk. Any advance on that?
Well, we didn't really rate them coming into the season, so I don't know why anything's changed.
No, exactly. All right, anything more from this particular game or these two teams?
Just that it was actually interesting. I saw where you'd posted the last podcast and you'd said, you only got any comments or suggestions or something, and somebody said that we were too nice to each other, and that person's got a point. And so just sort of moving on from that, another reason why you're an idiot for the Damian McKenzie thing is because for exactly the reasons that we saw, that he's an option to go to fullback, so he's got another thing that a lot of the other fly halves don't have. So, this was just an example of another thing that can happen, that he's going to score points. So anyway.
You watched the game, right? You saw how he'd almost died 3 times?
Yeah, and what does that tell you? I mean, he must be basically indestructible. Like, he got absolutely hammered and got up, and not everybody can do that. So, I mean, what more can you say?
That's good for 2-3 games, but 16-week season, let's see.
Shelve
that for later.
But that's the point, isn't it? That that's not going to happen every game. So, you've probably seen him...
You don't think he's going to get hammered every game? He's been on his haunches every game thus far.
Yeah, but that's my point, is that, he's not going to get hammered every game. And the one game where he did get hammered 3 times, it didn't put him down.
You don't think he's going to get hammered every game?
No. I mean... Okay.
I think he's going to get hit. I think he's just going to be just tackled and hit and continually hit.
Okay. We'll
just
see.
Trying to knock Tom Brady down, right?
But it's law of averages, though, right? I mean, you've probably seen the game where he's got his biggest hits laid on him, and it didn't knock him out.
Ironically, switching to 15 here, he didn't score as many points as he should have. We would have scored 35 points at 15 last time playing against the Blues in a performance like that.
Well, I mean,
he kicked a lot of ball, and badly.
Sure. But
you could see that the coaches have obviously said to him, kind of rein it in, and there was about 2 or 3 opportunities that I thought, oh, here we go. Someone's going to make me look stupid, and he just kicked it away with a lot of space.
He's still the number 1 fly half.
Oh, agreed. No, totally agree. I know, look, I'm just saying, shelve that idea that he's not going to get hit and he's not going to wear down. Brumbies, Reds. Worried about the Brumbies?
It's the coaches there are full of shit. Oh, there's one thing I can say, because didn't one of them come out and said, we're going to change the way we play, we're going to be more counter-attacking, we're going to do all these things, and they're really not. Like, Chance Penny just doesn't get the ball.
But he's a hot mess. Him and Speight I've got written down here. They're not getting the ball, and when they do, I don't know what's happened to them, but yeah, not looking good. Not looking good. CO's back this week, though. I will make a point of saying that is quite a big difference if you've got a front row of the Brumbies, but still, that the worrying signs are there for the Brumbies. Reds, though, slowly putting a performance together. Good to see Tuttle back kicking goals, signed a long-term contract with a line, I think, or a throwaway line that was in the article saying that they want him to be the marquee goal kicker for the next 5 years or whatever. So, positive news, give him a bit of a boost. Picked up 11 points. It's going to have a high floor, I think, for halfbacks, and that's something that you want to look for. So folks that have held on to him, fair play. Your Reds front row, really good.
Yeah. I mean, Tongan for as advertised, really.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They're using him wisely. So they're using him how they should be using him. There was one move off the back of a line out where he came on a hard angle, just to kind of in between maybe 7 and 10, and that made me think, right, they've kind of understood, they can trust him to scrum, so let's use him in the open where we need to use him, and he looked really strong. Very strong.
They've been watching YouTube.
Armchair managers, love it. So I mentioned before, Lealiafano, I was very nervous when I saw him come off at 43 minutes. Did it look like an injury to you? Or did you look like a straight sub?
I didn't see any kind of injury. You almost got the impression that it was just kind of ineffective and they needed to do something different.
Yeah, and it kind of fell apart from there.
So they did do something different.
They did something different,
they
absolutely.
Played worse.
Yeah, they did. But he's been named to start this week. In a fairly settled team. The only change really is CO and then open side as well. I rag on Godwin a little bit, but he's been solid, not great, but solid. He's at the, I think, 13, 14 point mark. Someone who's a bye-week fill-in shouldn't be too bad.
He's probably the highest scoring Brumbies back at the moment.
Jeez, he might be, He might be, which is, saying a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything more you want to say from this? What can you do about Speight and Peni? You're not going to get anything for them, right? You just have to wait for that good game.
No, I saw somebody drop Speight, and I think that's a mistake. He'll have good games, but for me, he's probably not a starter right now.
No, I'd be benching him as well. But he is a name. So we talk about this quite frequently, is that he's a player that you might be able to dangle in a trade, even if it's just a make-weight trade, because it's Henry Speight. And make sure you do it to an Australian manager, and you may get more bang for your buck out of it, because he is that name that people understand. Right, anything more? Karevi, how worried are you about Karevi? And a little point to note on this one as well is that, and this goes for a few players like Delinde and Am and a few others, there's other fantasy products out there that aren't using the Sanzar official stats, and they have given Karevi, as an example, a hell of a lot more run meters, and also Damien Delinde a hell of a lot more run meters than the official data stats. And they've been saying that Karevi is actually playing okay. Not so much for Fantasy Rugby Draft. He's been middle of the road. Disappointing, I would say, for a first round pick so far.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So do you get extra run meters for the number of followers you've got on Instagram or something? Is that how it works?
I'm pretty sure it is that Snapbook or whatever it is. Yeah.
That's pretty rubbish. It is almost, it's just one of those things on reputation, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where they get those from, but some big numbers have been posted, especially with Delinde. But anyway, nothing to do with Karevi at the moment. You just have to ride that out. There's a few studs in that first round. I mean, you can probably look at Folau as well. It's not exactly ripping up trees, but I wouldn't be selling at 80 cents on the dollar just yet.
No, you threw Am in there, and that was funny because coming into this, and I knew you were going to talk about Karevi, and I was thinking to myself, I think Am might score more points this season than Karevi.
Yeah, I reluctantly threw him in there as an example of someone who had scored more meters than the eye or the official stats, because I actually thought he was pretty close. He was the less egregious point because he did pick up a lot of meters. He's really, really, and we'll get to him and Andre Hesterhausen in a little bit. But yeah, I don't. Do I think he'll score more points than Karevi?
I just wanted to throw a big call out there, but it wouldn't surprise me.
You were watching the cricket, weren't you? You weren't paying attention.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Taylor got out. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, any more from Reds Brumbies?
No.
Rebels, Sunwolves. I'll throw probably the man in the moment at you, Jack Maddox. What are your thoughts on Jack?
Doesn't sound like he's going to be starting with Corabetti back, so yeah.
It doesn't. I read an article literally about 5 minutes ago that says that Corabetti might actually be on the bench. Right. And they may stick with Jack Maddox just in the first game at least.
Sure. And that's fine, but I mean, I'm not buying shares in Jack Maddox. Not to say that he's not a good player, but it is what it is. It's a hat-trick against the Sunwolves.
Yep, that's right. And interesting, the rest of the article was saying that Jack Maddox was being rewarded for his fine form early. And I was like, yeah, it's that, or it's Corabetti's just coming back from injury and we're not going to rush him into the starting lineup straight away. There was a funny comment, actually. Someone on the tweet said, "Oh, he'll be off to the Roosters next week then." The only other thing I was going to say about Jack Maddox is there's a lot of talk going around about him being and shifting into that fly half position for the Rebels. And that's not necessarily any sort of indication around Jack Maddox or Debrashini, but I thought it might be interesting for Reece Hodge owners. Because I think if Jack does go into that 10 position, then Reece Hodge all of a sudden becomes valuable. But at the moment, I'm officially worried about Reece Hodge. You too?
I think didn't he take over the kicking towards the end of this game?
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
And is that because Debrashini came off? I missed this game.
I think I had a look and I'm pretty sure Debrashini was still on the field. When
he laces out, was he? Was he thumping it 16 rows back?
Well, the thing is that he does what every goal kicking coach loves to see, and that's if you're going to miss them in as many different positions as you can. At least if you're hooking it every time, it's like, okay, I know I have to adjust. He's left, he's right, then he's left again. It's like he doesn't actually know how to kick a rugby ball.
100%. Yeah, he's all over the shop. Couldn't agree more. Interesting. Reece Hodge still. Okay, well, if that's the case, then there is a glimmer of hope, but I looked at the points total, still a bit dire. Sunwolves, little bit unlucky with Lafa'ali'i leaving the field quite early.
De Grandhom's just hit 3 sixes in a row.
Goodness me.
He's on fire.
What do we need?
We're closing in, so it's 39 off 39.
Oh, should be done from here. How many wickets in hand?
Still got 6 wickets in hand.
Oh, good night, nurse.
Still got Nichols to come. Still got the Master Blaster Mitchell Santner to come.
Well, that's Nichols chewing up 5 runs for no balls.
I think they probably won't use him.
No. Yeah,
He's probably Ken Southey ahead of him at the moment.
And that's saying something. Interesting players that have gone on tour for the Sunwolves. Saumaki, Lamaki, and Matsushima, and I think Yo Tamura is also is also on tour. So it's going to be a really interesting team naming from the Sunwolves, which will be today or tomorrow, to see which way they go. Because Tupou was okay, Yamada got injured, didn't get really too many points on that as well, but I expect them probably to go back to their first team. Just depending on how they do with Matsushima. Maybe they start him from the bench, but really interesting there. Keep an eye on that. Anything more from this game?
No, like you said, there's a few absentees from that Sunwolves team. Hayden Parker not there either, which kind of firms up Nakamura. If you are searching around for a replacement, if you got McKenzie on a bye and Mo'unga out and you didn't get Hunt, then Nakamura is the other player that you look at. Seems to have a pretty big mortgage on the goalkeeping job. The question, of course, is that how many points is he going to score against away against the Sharks, and that I'm sort of. I'm struggling to really want to play any Sunwolves this week.
Yeah, agreed. Rich Freeman alluded to it. They just don't particularly like travelling to South Africa, and they didn't do it well last season as well. So maybe it's a change of fortune with Jamie Joseph and TB. We'll see. You mentioned Richie Mo'ungas then. Let's move on to that. So it's pretty shattering. Literally. Did the jaw. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone who's listening to this podcast. Mitchell Hunt, or more than likely, we don't think there's any chance that it's not Mitchell Hunt, right?
Well, not based on what they've been saying in the papers.
No, that's right.
And some of that came directly from the coaches, I think. O'Gara might have actually been quoted as saying that. Right,
sure. At the same time as he's talking up Beauden Barrett, the best player that's ever lived.
That's right, yeah.
Loved it. So, I think 8 weeks is what I heard, and that's probably being a little bit optimistic for Richie Mo'ungas, but let's see.
Yeah, I mean, all you can really say about it is you don't pick up Hunt expecting him to be Mo'ungas, because he won't. He wasn't last year when he came in. He's just not that kind of player. If you weren't playing last year and you don't know, then yeah, that's what happened. He was pretty average, actually. Pretty average. His saving grace last year was the fact that he was an outside back. So at least he had a little bit of a high floor, but he wasn't really in the conversation amongst top outside backs even, so don't expect big things. I mean, I'm going to plug him in because Mackenzie's out, but if it was even with a good matchup, I'm still not really thinking about Hunt above whoever my other first choice is.
No, you're right. He's probably quite a wee way down the list. If you just had to rank them, I'd say he'd be around about the 10 mark. If you just looked at points he's going to put out for Fantasy Rugby Draft. Did you play against the Stormers front row in any of your matchups last weekend? That was fun.
No, I didn't actually know. I did. I had them on the bench.
Jesus.
But of course I was playing the Reds, and I still think Reds over Stormers in the long term. Yeah,
absolutely agree. Especially, I mean, you wouldn't really expect it to pick up this amount of points against the Crusaders, but goodness gracious, they just kept on cracking them up. They got a bit of a rocket at halftime by the look of it, put it up the jumper, and they did. Samu's shoulder is something you need to keep an eye on. He was just starting to look like that player that we thought he would be, in terms of line breaks and speed and offloads. And his week got cut short by about 20-30 minutes, which is a bit of a shame. For the Stormers, so I understand Damien Willems is fit again. Let's see if he starts for this Friday. I think the Highlanders are playing. Is that right?
Friday night. Yep, under the roof. Yep.
Jean-Luc Duplessis is also back fit again. I don't think he's with the squad, but he's training back in Cape Town. So that'll mean Lades that goes out into the wing again. Certainly not a fruitful exercise for Fantasy Rugby Draft managers with Lades at 10, is it?
No.
Sinatla injured as well, but there's promising signs that he actually may play on Friday as well. What do you make of Cobus Visa?
Oh, to be honest, I haven't been paying that close attention. I'm not going to buy it still this early on. I want to see a bit more.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree to a certain extent. I think there is something really promising there. I put requests in for all of my leagues to have him, but it wasn't number one. He looks an absolute machine, and he looks like someone who is going to take a lot of stopping, and a little bit different than the rest of those Stormers loose forwards. If you look at Notche and Carr and Khaleesi, they've got a little bit more finesse. Cobus Fisa looks like a mass. He looked like his dad, really, just charging down. Damien Delende, give him props where it's due. He looks better, a little bit more jinkier, and he does look a little bit fitter. But he's still not back to 2015 form, but fair dues to him. He looked a lot more involved in this game. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, he's trending in the right direction there, no doubt.
Yeah, agreed. Anything more from this, Todd, before the game got pulled? I think it was it 6-6 for him as well, I think, hand?
Yeah, probably, well, because obviously we're just covering the teams that played, so we won't cover the Highlanders. Interesting, because I'm sure people are thinking, play all your Highlanders this week, and that's probably fair, I think. But the Highlanders front row, I think, was an interesting one. Whether you do get value in out of the Highlanders front row playing these games, because it's just kind of a warning, because I'm sure in the past I've fallen for this myself, where you think this is going to be a high scoring game, they're going to smash them, and they might, to be honest. But I don't necessarily know if that'll translate to the front rows. Sometimes it doesn't. So just kind of a word of warning, really.
I think the Stormers have maybe accidentally stumbled on, shouldn't really be surprising, but it's a key to their success when they're travelling away, and that's to keep it in that massive bunch of forwards. So I expect them to kind of rinse and repeat against the Highlanders. Quite how effective it'll be, we'll see. But question for you then. Let's get into our 4 in form quiz, brought to you by Manager Pro, where winning is everything. Go to www.fantasyrugbydraft.com/Manager Pro. Because you're so crap at this game, I thought I'd help you out a little bit by giving you a clue about the top 4 players in form. 2 of them have only played 1 game week.
Yeah, that doesn't really help me. No, it actually doesn't.
The second highest scoring player in an individual performance this week. This season, pardon me, not this week.
This season.
So you should get.
Laumaki.
Salmaki,
sorry. Yeah.
Yep, number 1.
Yeah.
Because of that one performance that he put in.
That's right. Yep.
And then you can probably get 3 and 4.
So imagine, is Diente still up there?
Number 4.
Yeah, okay. And
we've talked about him already, your love child.
Mackenzie.
Yep. That's right. Number 2 is an interesting one, which more to show you exactly how good that performance was in Game Week 2 from a Highlander midfielder.
Rob Thompson?
It is.
No, was it
Yep,
Walden?
no, Rob Thompson.
Oh, it was, okay. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. So Salmaki 1, Thompson 2, Mackenzie 3, Diente 4.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, I expect Salmaki when he starts is probably not going to score 42.1 points this week against the Sharks, but hey, you never know. So we've just reduced the price of Manager Pro as well. We're into March, so we want to get as many managers to have the benefits that we've got in Manager Pro, so get amongst it. Right, where do you want to crack on to? Sharks Waratahs. We talked about it earlier, right? Andre Esterhuizen and Am. They're just not sexy, right? But they will win you championships.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Esterhuizen has actually done this before, scored a lot of points and done it under the radar, and still no one rated him. You'll see him sitting on waiver wires, and he 100% should not be there.
Nope, absolutely not.
Am, I rated a lot higher than that coming into the season anyway, so I've got shares in him, and I expect big things. I sort of the Am and Mapimpi show. I think we'll see that some weeks.
Yeah, indeed, and I quite like that backline. Actually, sorry, backline move. I quite like that move that they did with Aka van der Merwe, and he just came screaming through. Looked really good. Oh, and enough already, Dupree. Enough of this Murray fun. Let's just get Aka van der Merwe in there, please. Can we have him having more than 60 minutes, please? Off the bench. It's crazy. Schroeder. That's the other the place I want to go for the Sharks. Came back from injury, went straight over Cameron Wright in terms of pecking order. He's got the Sunwolves this week as well. I'd be surprised if he's out there in any leagues, but he should be good most of the season. I thought the Sharks actually fell away a little bit when Cameron Wright came on. He made a few mistakes. Schroeder was clearing that ruck a lot better than Wright was. Really like what I saw there. What do you make of the Waratahs?
Gosh, such a mixed bag, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's really hard to know what to make of them. I think they're gonna be a team that's gonna frustrate you kind of all year. They're gonna have up and down games. They'll have home games where I think they'll put up big points. But I just don't think there's enough of them that you can rely on. Obviously Folau, even Foley,
No, I know.
It'll be the away games, I think, that'll be the death of you with Foley.
Yep. And to kind of circle gets the square with DMaks, Foley, Richie Mo'ungas. DMaks probably down on his average points, but it's more to the point around looking at the other two. They just haven't really performed. They've been very stop-starty. They've both had a couple of duds in there as well. So just consistency with those guys. Folau actually switched to wing when Hegarty came on. Our mate Bryce Hegarty, who, well, certainly I've been a little bit harsh on him in previous years, he actually looked okay and fairly serviceable. And if we see injuries to Beale and Rona, who got injured at the very end as well, we could well see Hegarty actually be something, and as well as Naivaru as well. So something to monitor there. Tahs front row, another good performance from them. So most people will have Stormers and Reds on their radar, Blues on their radar. They might not have the Waratahs on their radar. So just keep an eye out for that as well. Anything more from this particular game?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So Bulls, Lions. I think where I wanted to start with this is those who have Manager Pro, just be aware that we get our information as soon as the team managers for each of the individual franchises submits their final team to Sanzar. So when someone like Stevenson, the Chiefs only submitted it at 7:32, which is after the game lock. However, the Bulls team management knew Odendell was out at about lunchtime on Saturday afternoon in South Africa, and we pushed that out news. So it's a roundabout saying, if you've got Manager Pro, just check in, if you can, I guess, for those that are on multi-time zones, it's a bit more difficult, but just check in to make sure that your team news is expected just before the game lock in each of those individual players. A knock-on from that, interestingly enough, was Pollard and Boshoff. Don't see that happening again, though, right, with Berger Odendell on tour?
Yeah, no, it was an interesting one. I'm sure it took a lot of people by surprise. Berger and Odendell, correct me if I'm wrong, is he not the captain?
Yes.
Then, yeah, I think you're right.
Yep. So a little bit of behind the scenes of how I approach a lot of my leagues. If I have that spare bench spot, I'm looking for players that if something happened, if X happened, that this player would have huge upside. And I saw Pollard go down, and I thought he was the most valuable backup fly half in the league in terms of what he would actually do if the person in front of him went down. So I picked up Boshoff in actually a couple of 3 of my leagues, and it turned out Saturday evening there was a chance to play him. Played okay. He was kicking the goals. He actually, I don't know, I won't get into the Pollard 12-10 debate. There's a lot of people writing a lot more articles on it. I will suffice to say that I don't think Pollard sets a very good backline. He spends a lot of time and effort trying to pass a ball. But hey-ho. So we think Pollard's probably going to go back into 10. Rohan van Rensburg, very, very good again. Back to his barnstorming best. Your front row, the Bulls' front row, what do you make of it now, one game further on?
It was just weird. It was just weird to me that they just seemed to go away completely from something that had worked for them the week before. And I just couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand the mentality of changing the tactics in that way, you know.
Couldn't agree more.
Can't explain it.
Odd. Yeah. And you mentioned last week, you know, the Bulls' front row might not be on many people's radar because of that yellow card. I'm starting to wonder if maybe the yellow card isn't the exception, and that's going to happen most weeks. They got into some pretty horrible positions. I will say Skoman, though, we've had some pretty good oil on him. He sounds like a pretty promising, well, he's been around a wee bit, but he sounds like he might add a bit of punch to that front row in terms of fantasy rugby draft. I was going to get into Warwick Hallant. Did you see him get run round by Mahuza?
Oh my God. It was funny because I was watching it and I saw it happen at the time, and I saw, he just ran around that flanker, that replacement flanker. And then they called his name because I didn't realize, he was wearing number 23. And, I had no idea it was him. He looked so slow. It was ridiculous. I just assumed it was a forward.
It looked like you playing sweeper and touch. He just stuck in mud. Just went round him like he wasn't there. It's outrageous. I wonder now whether the Warwick Hallant injury, and I've got my fingers in inverted commas here, wasn't so much an injury, but holy shit, look how big Warwick is. Let's not start him. Let's see if we can get him into shape before we start him.
Yeah, he's been going to the Amua training gym or something, working out together.
Indeed. Anything more on this, mate?
No.
Alright, good man. Do you start Ben Lamb in any of your leagues?
Didn't. No, I had him on the bench, and that was as much as I was willing to do.
You can't really trust him. I think that's probably the place where he needs to be, right? Because you've got so many players in the mix there with Wes Houston, Severe, Arso, now with Geordie Barrett in the mix as well. It's really tough to figure out what to do with him. I thought it was quite amusing. I'm going to quote one James Hunter. That's a fair shot on Lamb. You hot dog round in the end goal, you're going to get got. I quite like that. It's at this point that Henry Nichols hit the winning runs and we lost Mossman. Last seen running down East Coast Bays Road, yelling something about Ross Taylor. So just to put a bow on the podcast, and probably the last game, just to kind of touch up a little bit about the Hurricanes Hawares. Front row, very concerning start for them. However, Fido and Amua, which were the players that we were looking towards to boost their Hurricanes front row, may be starting to see a little bit of game time, and I expect Amua to be there and thereabouts, at least the squad this weekend as well. And Gunjhammer had a good stat on Twitter about penalty machine. It's always been White Crocker's moniker, but you actually look at the stats, it's Ben May. He wasn't particularly good this weekend, and he certainly wasn't good from his tackle point of view as well. Just not a very good game at all round. And you saw Fido's explosiveness in the tens, and also from the last wee bit in this game. I expect Boyd to put out his top team this week, so I think you're likely to see the back three combination of Severe, Arso and Geordie Barrett at 15, even though that he was relatively quiet. I suspect that's probably their top lineup, and they've got the Crusaders at home, so they'll be looking to continue on their fairly good record against the Crusaders in Wellington. There aren't many players on the Hawares that I'm actually interested in starting at the moment in Fantasy Rugby Draft. I think maybe the only player is Sanchez, who seems to be relatively getting it done. Even Buffelli is not exactly putting up the points that we were hoping. I think going back to a little bit what I mentioned before about having a little bit of a roll of the dice on a player that could prove to be very, very valuable should the situation dictate. For instance, if there's an injury in front or a suspension or something like that. And I used Boshoff as an example. If you've got that bench space, I've seen Martin Landaho dropped in a lot of leagues, or cut in a lot of leagues, pardon me. Now, obviously it's very dependent on who you are cutting, but he could potentially be top 3 or even top halfback if the situation arises where there's an injury to Bertrand or a suspension or a change of heart from Ledesma. I think I saw Bertrand might be the top missed tackler in the competition. Not sure where I saw that stat. Apologies for the person who might be listening who put out that stat. Beauden Barrett kicking was an interesting one. I say interesting, it's probably less interesting, so because it's Geordie's first game out. Let's see 2 or 3 games down the track, whether that actually changes. For the Warriors, I believe De La Fuente, which has always been a fan favourite of Mossman's and mine, should be back this weekend, or close to being back this weekend. We shall see. But if he's fit, I suspect he'll get plugged straight back into that team. He's very valuable, and Warriors are in a little bit of a spot. Nabura starting for the Highlanders is an interesting one over Jet Li. Didn't see it coming. no coverage of exactly why that's happened, whether it's an injury or whether it's just a decision made by Mage. Unsure at this point, and probably the most devastating news that we've just had to hand is Jaco Kriel has to go for a second operation on his shoulder. So he's out for another 6 months, which is just absolutely devastating for the kid. Devastating for Fantasy Rugby Draft managers as well, who drafted him, I think, on average somewhere in the second round, hoping that he would be back end of March, start of April. It looks like, well, certainly 6 months takes him outside of the end of the Super Rugby season, so that's absolute disaster. That's about all we have time for. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rug Draft. That's Fantasy RUG Draft, or drop us a note at support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. We have our Start Bench show on Friday night at 6:30 New Zealand time, so send through all your questions, preferably on Twitter and on Facebook. We struggle a little bit to get to as many mails as we can, but preferably on Twitter and Facebook. And as long as you put the hashtag, then that's what we'll be trawling through our replies to answer the questions for the Friday show. Good luck for all the team selections. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
I think just with the uncertainty, it'll be Ngatai. It probably would have been Ngatai anyway, to be fair.
What a basket by Christian Cullen.